Welcome to Book Talk. My name is Steve Seitz. I'm the host, and we are here to talk about all kinds of books. The last few episodes, as regular viewers know, have been writers talking to writers and librarians talking about books, and now we're going to come up with a book that people can actually use, Susie Crowther's No Recipe Cookbook. And Susie is here with us, and she's got some things to demonstrate and talk about. But first, we'd like to know a little bit more about the book itself.
Okay.
A cookbook with no recipes is going to be an eye grabber. How does it work?
Yeah, I guess it's a very Vermont type of cookbook because it's subversive right up the bat, cookbook without recipes. But yeah, it's a book that teaches people how to cook without recipes rather than just following a recipe. So it has kind of follows along the adage, teach a man to fish instead of just handing them the fish kind of thing.
Yeah.
So the book is broken down into basic philosophies, why to cook basically, and then basic ingredients. So there's a lot of lists, things like top 10 condiments, top 10 ingredients, top 10 meats. We'll talk a little bit about that. And also things like top 10 meals. And then there are basic principles, basic procedures that show a lot of, how to cook soups and stews and salads and grains and beans and veggies, just real, again, to not overuse the word, but basic types of foods. And then people can combine them once they have some foundational procedures. And then there's a chapter on beyond the basics, what kinds of things to drink. And there's a section on baking. Baking is a little bit more persnickety.
Oh, you bet.
When it comes to, it's more science than art, I like to think. But there's a section on some templates about baking. And then interwoven is anecdote. I went to culinary school, and a lot of crazy chef stories about, about the adventures at the Culinary Institute of America and culinary wit and wisdom, if you will.
Oh, the rival. You're with the CIA. Most of my friends are at Necky.
Yeah, right. So it was instead of chicken soup for the soul, I guess it's miso soup for the soul. Just very briefly, the book was written, I was working in a health food store, and a woman came in and had a recipe for a soup called cream of cauliflower soup. And it called for this mellow white miso. It was just this particular kind of miso, which is like a soy bouillon. We didn't have that particular brand, but we had like 30 other varieties, and she just could not be persuaded to substitute. And she ended up leaving, and she was really discouraged. And without too much thought, I just thought to myself, I should just write a book on how to cook. So I did.
Sort of making the most of what you've already got in the kitchen.
Yeah, and one of your guests and I were chatting, and we were talking about how it really uses a lot of common sense and creativity. What's in the garden, what's in the fridge, what's starting to rot, what do you like to eat? But even though a lot of that's common sense, a lot of times people don't know how to literally prepare the food.
Right.
So
you like to take the ground up approach.
Yeah. I like
understand exactly what it is you're working with and figure out how to make it work together.
Yeah, and hopefully to just have people feel a little more creative, become a little more empowered, take a few more chances in the kitchen and add things together just, to try and experiment and have fun.
So how did you start cooking really?
When I was 3, I started baking, and to talk about it in the book, it's called, I called it mishmash. And I don't know if it was science or a game, whatever it was. When you're 3, I was mixing ingredients together, and once in a while things would come out as being edible.
With your mother in the room?
Yeah, with my mother in the room, baking and doing all that stuff with the oven. And from mishmashing, I just enjoyed cooking. My first job when we moved to Vermont was at Mama Peduzzi's pizzeria, and I liked making the pizza.
That's the pizzeria that used to be in Brattleboro, by the way. It's Frankie's now.
Mama Peduzzi's, yeah. And then just cooking was always a fallback. Whenever other jobs didn't work out, I always fell back on cooking. I liked the craziness of cooking and the creativity of it.
Out of curiosity, when were you in Brattleboro?
We moved in '75, and I've been off and on since
then.
You
just missed me. I graduated high school in 1974, and then I was off to UVM.
At BOHS?
Yeah.
Yeah, so yeah, we did. We did get there the very next year.
Do you still make pizza?
No, not much. I like it though. Yeah, boy, we have so many pizza shops, but I digress.
Yes, yeah. Getting back to the topic, we get to learn our ingredients, and then we get to play with them.
Sure, yeah. And one of the one of the things about the book is that it's a meat-free book. I guess you could call it a vegetarian book, and I'm not a vegetarian. For those who know anything about blood types, I'm an O positive, which means I'm the closest to a carnivore that's sort of roaming the human planet. And I personally like meat. I like eating it. I've tried to be a vegetarian, but it's hard to condone meat nowadays. It's a hard sell for all the economic and political and physiological. It's hard to sell. So I thought I wouldn't include it in the book, and I talk about that in the book a little bit. So what I brought today is some meat-free options.
Okay.
That offer.
And more importantly, heat-free options, because we don't have the equipment here.
Yeah, well, and again, one of the tenets in the book is kind of like use what you have, and even in terms of like coming on the show, I knew I'd be doing some talking and some showing. I knew our space would be limited, and I wanted to, you want to make the use of the time that you had, the parameters that you have, and in a way to illustrate. So it's just kind of cooking with common sense, like, I didn't bring out a chainsaw and a big block of ice to do a nice sculpture, roast mutton in the background. Do you want me to just kind of?
That's why we're here.
All right, well then, yeah. So let's see. There's in the basic ingredients, there's a list of top 10 meats, which is just a term that I coined, MEETZ.
Ah.
So they're meat-free options. And some of the ones that I have prepared up front I'll get to is, one of them is tempeh, and I can hold it up. Tempeh is a fermented soybean, and it's kind of like a very simple cheese, if you will, although it's a little different because it's the whole soybean. The cheesier part of the soy is tofu, so these are two products that I have here today. Tempeh has the whole bean, so it's a little more nutritious. And tempeh is fermented, it's inoculated with a grain, so it has B12.
Oh.
Vegetarian form of B12, which is kind of rare. And, disgustingly nutritious, packed with nutrient density. Could live off this stuff. Tofu has...
I take it it's somewhat flavorful.
Well, it's very neutral. Tofu and tempeh are very neutral. They like to absorb flavors. Yeah, they need flavor because they're very bland.
So it would make them versatile.
Yeah, so what I do is I've offered some ingredients here to play with. These are two big mainstays in the book. This is tamari, which is a healthier version of soy sauce. It's just got a few more nutrients and little less salt. And it's also fermented, so it's got, when you ferment, there's a little extra nutrition. And then this guy is Bragg's Liquid Aminos, which is it's like a beef bouillon or a soy sauce flavor. And it has all 18 essential and non-essential amino acids, which means it's like eating meat. It's a complete protein. I'll just have you try that.
Thank you.
Put you on the spot. It has kind of a beefy flavor.
Yeah, I'd say so.
Yeah, I like that. And with vegetarian food, people will lament like, oh, well, am I getting a complete protein? And there are a lot of ways to get complete protein, which means you eat some building blocks that the body doesn't produce. You have to eat those amino acids. So this Bragg's amino acids has a complete protein. That's like eating meat. And actually, this tier 2 miso is another version of soy. So you've got a lot of versions of soy, and these are complete proteins. So yeah, you get to play with all kinds of things, and even bean sprouts. So just lots of different ways to get some protein in you. And this is another version of miso is like a sweeter version of bouillon, and it's a paste, and it's also alive.
Oh.
Yeah. And you usually just put it in hot water like bouillon, and you make a soup out of it, or you put it in cream of cauliflower soup, if you can find it. So so these are some meat-free options. Just the condiments themselves are meat-free options. I've used all of these products in seasoning these things, and olive oil, because it's so healthy.
Oh, yes.
Yeah, good old olive oil.
I have found, incidentally, if you have popcorn, you can just warm up some olive oil, pour it over, and it's just the same.
Olive oil, and while he's talking about popcorn, This is, are you familiar with this little guy?
No, I'm not.
This is nutritional yeast, and it tastes like cheese.
Oh, I am familiar with it. Sorry, I just didn't know it was yeast.
High in
I see it
protein.
drink.
Yeah, it's high in protein and got tons of B vitamins, and cheesy. It's got a cheesy flavor. Really putting you on the spot. You can certainly not like any of these things.
I'll let you know.
Yeah, but on popcorn, I really I like that.
Oh, I hadn't thought about that. That's a good idea.
Yeah, so then you can, yeah, this is real high in protein too. So all of these things when you're thinking about not eating meat. All right, so let's see some other things before we go into the sampling. This is not a high protein item, but it's a condiment that I talk about in the book. It's raw, undistilled apple cider vinegar. And if you have a Facebook account, you'll see these memes that talk about like the 12 benefits of apple cider vinegar. You know, it'll cleanse your blood and you'll and make your hair vibrant and your skin vibrant, and it'll reduce cholesterol, and it'll, you know, like move your mother-in-law out of the basement, and it just does it does everything. It'll, you know, it's just it's this sort of miracle, touted as a miracle ingredient, and it's got loads of potassium is one of the things it does. Now we just have apples in Vermont.
Yeah.
So, you know, I think we're pretty good to go. But that's let's see, how about?
Can you make this yourself from the
Yeah.
the raw apple cider?
Yeah, when I try to make hard cider and I fail, I make this, and I do that a lot because I'm lazy. So this is this has this thing called the mother, which if you've ever brewed beer, it's this cloudy thing.
Yeah, I've made this.
But it does have it has cleansing, healing properties, and I just use it as I use it as an ingredient instead of the white vinegar. Yeah. Some other ways to get your meat, again, just good old cheap refried beans. This is a brand I get at the health food store. It's burritos. But they had it at Mr. G's discount, so I got it for cheap. And this is what tofu looks like. Just a block, it looks like cheese, and they like to soak it in water. And these are tamari almonds. Almonds have a complete protein, which means, again, they have all these amino acids, and they're yummy. Yeah. Yeah. And I won't eat them because I'll spit at you.
No.
Yeah, tamari almonds. I really like those. So they've got the tamari, which is high in protein, and almonds are a complete protein. So lots of ways to get protein without eating meat. And one final way is to eat this grain, which is called quinoa. Quinoa is very popular nowadays. It's also getting a little bit of negative press because it's mined, if you will, from Ecuador and Bolivia. And it's becoming very popular, and so now it's...
How do you mine grain?
That was just me being sarcastic.
Oh.
Yeah, so now because of the overproduction of it, I think it's becoming a little abused, but it's yummy, and it's a complete protein, and it's got a nutty flavor. So we'll have you dive in. Let's see, it might be better to have you have a fork. The first one would be the tempeh. And
this one here?
Yeah, there's garlic in there, and onion, and some of these ingredients here.
Yeah, that has an eggplant type of consistency.
Yeah, it's firm, but not, I mean, it's not New
Not
York
eggplant.
sirloin, yeah,
No.
but it's not as mushy as an eggplant, yeah. And again, if you let that marinate for a couple days, it'll take on any flavor. So, and all I did was fry it up, and I had some onions, so I added that. And the next one is, yeah, you're welcome to, you can keep going because this was here for you. And that's the quinoa. And it has kind of a rice-a-roni flavor, I like to think. It's got the nutritional yeast, might be a little salty, olive oil, and the Bragg's, and the
No,
little
wonderful.
bit of the vinegar. Yeah. And I also put garlic in there as well. And then this one is made with a little bit of curry powder. This is the tofu. And I cut it into small little bits. Yeah, this is so that one's got a little bite, so.
I know. Well, I'm glad you didn't go to rocket fuel with this. Your curry, my experience with curry is a little goes a very long way.
Yeah, and I think I kind of peppered it up a bit, so I thought I'd end with that on that note. But
it's quite flavorful. You have a light touch.
yeah, well, thank you. So yeah, so those are some of the things that are that I discuss in the book and talk about, how to prepare and talk about their health benefits and as the condiments as well. Yeah.
What about equipment? Do you need any? Lots of different kitchens have different equipment. Can you do it with your everyday kitchen?
Yeah, I have very little equipment because I don't know. I've moved a lot, and then I maybe for me I know what I can get away with, so I might have more confidence. But I have just a few cast iron pans, and I always use cast iron because I had heard a long time ago that you can get iron into your diet by using the cast iron pans, and the iron leaches into the food, and so it's a very cheap way to get iron. So I use cast iron pans. I have 2 of them, and one knife is all you really need. I should have brought it. I have a French knife, they're called French knives or utility knives, and I joke that my knife, I've had it for over 30 years. I've had it longer than all my husbands and my kids and all my careers. It's like,
who needs you? I've got this.
If there's a fire, the knife is coming with me, pushing my kids out of the way and running with it. No, just kidding. We love our children. And so that one knife and 2 pans, and I'm thinking of the movie The Jerk with
Steve Martin.
Yeah, and just my thermos and what else do I have? A couple of good bowls and actually that's in the book as well. There's a list of some real basic things. So I don't have to list them all for you here, but those stand out as really primary things in the kitchen.
So you cook on the top of the stove, I would guess, more often than using the oven.
Yeah, mostly. Yeah, I like to cook on the top of the stove. We have a wood stove, so I like to play with that too.
How do you control the temperature in a wood stove?
You don't. You just have to check it a little more, and that variable is constant, right? Mostly, I guess. So add more water.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Well, my wife bakes a lot, therefore everything has to be precise.
Yeah. So, baking is definitely harder. And in the baking section, I talk about, again, when I was 3, doing mishmash. And every time I try to bake without recipes, I seem to create mishmash. I mean, it's just sort of a lumpy, rubbery, pancakey type of thing.
Well, that's because of the chemistry. Yeah. The thing about baking is chemists make great bakers because they know all the ingredients. And they never share, incidentally. But
right.
But you've got to follow all the instructions, and if you mess up one little thing, sometimes you get lucky and come up with something different. But most of the time, it just comes out scorched. I have some Cajun toast.
Yeah, baking's hard. It's because just one little second here and a little bit of baking powder here and there. But I did provide templates in the book, like cake, cookie, pancake, muffin. So these sort of generic recipes, and in them, I describe things like there are 3 basic methods for baking. There's a wet into dry, there's a short dough, and there's like a creamy, like a sweet sauce, like making pumpkin pies or chocolate mousse. So I start with those, and then I have these template recipes that instead of saying like a cup of milk, it'll say a cup of liquid.
Yeah.
And then I have lists of what might a liquid be.
And that always helps because those are the kinds of directions that drive you crazy.
Yeah. Now, it takes a little bit, you're kind of looking at that section and everyone's kind of crazy busy, so we'll see.
Yeah.
Haven't heard a lot of complaints yet, but.
I haven't had a chance to go through the entire book. Is there a chapter on preserves or preserving vegetables, canning, that sort of thing?
There is a section on, I call it Wild Things, and it's about fermenting.
Yeah.
Canning's on my culinary bucket list. I'm going to do it this year, by golly. Do you know how to can?
Are you kidding? My mother's family goes back to the Republic. They've been dirt farmers since the 1790s. I know the basics. My mother greatly embraced the 1950s. Labor saving, she was right there.
Pressure cooker and all. Did you have that? Yeah.
Oh boy, the day that blew up, I will never forget it.
I should, we should YouTube that. I bet there's some funny videos. I've never looked at pressure cookers, but yeah, they were crazy. They were dangerous back then.
Well, they're much safer now.
Yeah.
But back then, you could see the gauge getting. It was right out of a cartoon.
Yeah.
The thing would get over into the red zone, and then there's Grandma diving for the stove to make sure she gets it off the heat in time.
Yeah, I would just stay right out of the kitchen for that. So let's see, where was I?
You were talking about fermenting.
Yeah, fermenting.
A topic close to my heart.
Yeah, so there's an author named Sandor Katz, and he publishes books through Chelsea Green, which I believe is Vermont.
Yes. Yep. I forget exactly where they are. They're not in Chelsea, I know that.
Yeah,
Why would they be?
And he wrote a great book. He's written a few, but one book that I really loved was called Wild Fermentation. And it's got recipes, but just all this fermenting around the world, but really great user-friendly recipes. And one of his recipes was for kosher sour pickles. And they were all, there's no vinegar and no heating. So, you make this salt brine and you have garlic and whatever, and the magic ingredient is like a grape leaf. He said you can use any live leaf, like I use apple leaves. And you put that in, and it's got the bacteria, the probiotic, the friendly bacteria, which ferments the pickles. Yeah, so it's kind of like a sauerkraut, and they, you make these half sour pickles, or full sours if you wait long enough. So I talk about fermenting those pickles, and actually there is one recipe in the book. There's one recipe in the book. And that's Sandor Katz's live pickles, because I was just so impressed. I just love that. And you want to break your own rules. And in the book, I talk about why fermented foods are so healthy for people. It feeds the second brain in our stomachs.
I see. What would some other fermented foods be?
Well, miso is fermented. And again, miso is it's a great thing to have. If you just drink it with hot tea, the lore about miso is that traffic cops in Japan, in Tokyo, they'll drink this for their lunch break to help cleanse them of all the impurities from the traffic of the cars. So it'll cleanse their blood, so it keeps them vibrant. And so I would say miso is fermented, and the tempeh is fermented food. Sauerkraut, but again, you'd want to have live things like live sauerkraut, kimchi, and trying to think of some other things offhand that I might have talked about in the book. The Bragg's is actually fermented.
Ah, wonderful.
Yeah, but if you go to the co-ops now, they have a lot of fermented beets and fermented carrots and.
Yeah.
So do you like some fermented foods?
Yes, I do.
Like which ones do you?
Well, the other half of the family was German. My father immigrated. So you talk about sauerkraut. I've had the real thing.
Yeah. Oh, I imagine. It was amazing.
It's amazing to me, but we are running slowly out of time.
Great, yeah.
So if you could tell us a little bit about the radio show, where listeners can pick it up.
Oh, okay. What's Cooking plays on WVEW. That's in Brattleboro 107.7 FM, and it also streams online at wvew.org. So What's Cooking runs Tuesdays 1 to 2, and it's a show, it's a hearty stew of music news, commentary on healthy living and cooking, and I have guests on and things like that.
And of course, we can find your book in most bookstores, I imagine.
Yeah, it sells actually, it's selling all over in culinary shops and in the co-ops, and it sells at the Springfield Co-op, so a plug for the Springfield Co-op. And you can also order it online at norecipecookbook.com.
Well, Susie Crowther, thank you very much for joining us on Book Talk.
Yeah, thank you for having me.
And I'm Steve Seitz, and here we have wrapped up another exciting episode, and bon appetit, everyone.